The smell is the first thing that hits you. It is not the clean, sterile scent of healing, but a sharper, colder smell. Industrial bleach, stale coffee, and the faint, copper tang of fear. The lights in the corridor of Mercy West Hospital are a sickly fluorescent yellow, humming a low, anxious note that vibrates inside your bones. They flicker, catching the weariness in the faces of nurses who move with a hurried, percussive rhythm, their rubber-soled shoes squeaking on the polished linoleum. They do not make eye contact. No one does. In a place dedicated to new life, the air is heavy with unspoken anxieties. "Mom, she just wants her family here." David's voice was unnaturally low, as if it were a secret he was ashamed of. He stood 3 feet away, a stranger wearing the face of the boy I raised. I searched his eyes, the deep hazel eyes I had watched open for the first time 35 years ago in a small hospital room in Ohio, windows fogged with the humidity of a July thunderstorm. Those eyes, which had once looked at me as if I were the center of the universe, now darted nervously toward the closed door of the maternity room, room 308. A pink and blue wreath hung on the knob, mocking me. "David," I whispered, my voice rough from the 8-hour train ride, "I am family." He winced, a small, tight motion of his mouth. "You know what I mean. Her family. Her mother is in there with her." He shifted his weight, the fabric of his expensive Chicago suit rustling. "Look, she's not comfortable. Sophia has never really understood you." The world did not stop. It did not slow down. Instead, it became painfully, terribly sharp. I could hear the precise click of a nurse's pen at the station down the hall. I could feel the cold draft from the air conditioning vent above my head. I could see a tiny scuff mark on David's left shoe, leather so polished it reflected the sickly yellow lights. I understood in that moment that the cruelest words are not shouted in anger. They are delivered in a quiet, reasonable tone, a simple statement of fact that slices you in two while strangers walk past, politely averting their gaze. I see. What else was there to say? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that I had sat on an Amtrak train for 8 hours, the landscape of Indiana blurring past the window, my hands clutching the small, soft blanket I had knitted. The yarn was a pale, gentle yellow, the color of spring sunlight. My fingers ached from working the needles every night for 3 months, weaving into every stitch a prayer for this child, my grandson. I had imagined this moment so differently. I had imagined David's face lighting up, the exhaustion of new fatherhood replaced by joy as he said, "Mom, you're here. Come meet Noah." I imagined Sophia, tired but glowing, offering the baby to me. I imagined the weight of him in my arms, the smell of his skin, that perfect, powdery scent of new life. I never imagined this. I never imagined being treated like an intruder, a problem to be dismissed. From behind the closed door of room 308, a cry erupted. It was thin and fragile, a sharp, reedy sound that pierced the barrier of the wood and went straight into my chest. My grandson, my blood. He was crying, and I was on the wrong side of a door, forbidden to enter. My mind, a traitor, flashed back to a different time. David, 3 years old, crying in the night, terrified of the thunder that rattled our small house. His father, Thomas, was a heavy sleeper, exhausted from the garage, and it was always me who stumbled out of bed, my feet bare on the cold wooden floor. I would lift David from his crib, his small body trembling, and hold him against my chest, singing a tuneless song until his sobs quieted into slow, steady breaths. I thought of the fevers, the midnight trips to the emergency room, the skinned knees, the broken arm from falling out of the oak tree. I thought of the endless, thankless, beautiful work of being his mother. And now, that same boy, the man I had shielded from the world, was shielding the world from me. I looked at my son, this tall, successful man in his expensive suit, and I felt a profound, bottomless pity. Not for myself, but for him. He had no idea what he was doing. He was so busy pleasing his wife that he had forgotten the woman who had given him life. "Don't insist, Mom, please." His voice was pleading now, which was somehow worse. He wanted me to make this easy for him. He wanted me to absorb his rejection and disappear quietly. I clutched the strap of my worn leather handbag. It was a dark brown bag my own mother had given me when I turned 30, the leather now cracked and soft as old gloves. For all the important moments, she had said. It had been with me when Thomas died. It had been with me at David's college graduation. And it was with me now, in this moment of profound humiliation. I nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion. I swallowed the acid that rose in my throat. I would not cry. I would not give him the satisfaction of my tears. Congratulations on your son, David. I did not say goodbye. I did not wait for his relieved exhale. I simply turned and walked away. Each step down that endless, flickering corridor was a betrayal. My sensible shoes, the ones I had worn for the long train ride, made almost no sound. I passed other doors with wreaths. I heard the murmur of happy families. I saw another grandmother, silver-haired and beaming, carrying a baby carrier out toward the elevators. She smiled at me, a stranger sharing in a universal joy, and I could not smile back. The automatic doors of Mercy West slid open with a pneumatic hiss, releasing me into the brutal cold of a Chicago February night. The wind off Lake Michigan was a physical blow, stealing my breath and stinging my eyes. Taxis rushed past, their yellow lights blurring in the darkness. I stood on the sidewalk, a 63-year-old woman from a small town in Ohio, completely and utterly alone in a city of millions. I did not know where to go. My return train was not until the following afternoon. I had booked a room at a modest hotel near the hospital for 3 nights, planning to help, to cook, to be useful. I had packed frozen casseroles, David's favorites, wrapped in foil and towels in a cooler bag, imagining I would stock their freezer. The bag was still in my hand, suddenly impossibly heavy. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver the address of a cheap motel I had passed on the way in, one with a flickering neon sign that said, "Vacancy." The room smelled of cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. The walls were thin, and I could hear a television blaring in the next room, punctuated by loud, angry coughing. The bedspread was a nauseating shade of orange and brown, rough against my skin. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress, the cooler bag at my feet, and only then, in the anonymity of that rented room, did I allow myself to break. I wept as I had not wept since the day Thomas died. I cried for the wasted journey, for the 8 hours of hope that had curdled into this sour reality. I cried for the small, knitted blanket in my suitcase that would not touch my grandson's skin. I cried for the casseroles that would thaw and spoil. But most of all, I cried for David, the boy who loved my cooking, the teenager who held me at his father's funeral, the young man who promised he would always take care of me. Where had he gone? At what point had he been replaced by this cold, accommodating stranger? I slept fitfully, the sounds of the city and the creaking of the motel plumbing keeping me on the edge of consciousness. At 5 a.m, I gave up. I rose, showered in the small, mildewed bathroom, the hot water a temporary comfort. I dressed carefully. I put on the dark blue knit dress I had saved for this trip. I applied my makeup, a dusting of powder, a touch of lipstick. My mother taught me that dignity was a choice, one you made especially when your heart was breaking. I spent the day as a ghost, walking the unfamiliar streets. Chicago was a massive, indifferent city of steel and glass. I walked through Millennium Park, watching families ice skating, their laughter echoing in the cold air. I saw mothers pushing strollers, grandmothers holding tiny hands. I bought a coffee I did not drink and a pastry that tasted like cardboard. At 4 p.m, I went to Union Station. The train ride home was the inverse of the journey there. The hope was gone, replaced by a hollow ache. I watched the frozen fields of Illinois and Indiana pass by in the descending darkness. I did not see the landscape. I saw only my own reflection in the darkened glass, a tired, pale woman with eyes that had seen too much. I wondered if David had even noticed I was gone. I wondered if, between the diaper changes and the congratulations, he had felt a single pang of guilt. A small, cold part of me knew he had not. He was happy. He had his new, perfect family. And I was just an inconvenient loose end, he had successfully tied up. I arrived in Columbus at 2 in the morning. My small town was another hour's drive. My old car was waiting in the long-term lot, cold and silent. I drove the dark, empty highways, the only sound the hum of the engine and the classic rock station playing softly on the radio. When I opened the front door of my house, the silence was absolute. It was the same silence I had left, but it felt different. Before, it was peaceful. Now, it was empty. The scent of cinnamon and old books that usually comforted me now just smelled like a life on pause. My coffee mug was still in the sink from 2 days ago. The local newspaper was still on the kitchen table. I dropped my suitcase by the door. I hung my leather purse on its hook. I put the cooler bag on the counter and methodically unpacked the thawed casseroles, scraping them one by one into the garbage disposal. The sound of the grinding motor was obscenely loud in the quiet house. I made a fresh pot of coffee, the aroma filling the kitchen, and sat at the table. This was the table where David had done his homework, the table where Thomas and I had paid bills and dreamed of retirement, the table where I now sat, a grandmother who had not been allowed to be a grandmother. It was there, in the quiet dawn of my Ohio kitchen, as the first gray light began to creep through the window, that my phone rang. It startled me, the sound cutting through the silence. An unknown number from Chicago. My heart, that stupid, hopeful muscle, gave a painful leap. It's David. He's sorry. He's calling to apologize. I answered, my voice trembling. Hello? Is this Mrs. Eleanor Vance? The voice was female, crisp, and utterly devoid of emotion. Yes, this is she. Good morning, Mrs. Vance. My name is Tricia, and I'm calling from the Billing and Collections Department at Mercy West Hospital. My blood turned to ice. It ran cold and slow through my veins. Billing? Yes, ma'am. We are processing the discharge paperwork for Sophia Marino Vance, and there is a significant outstanding balance. The insurance provided has covered the standard delivery, but not the requested private suite, the after-hours specialty consultations, or the additional neonatal monitoring. The remaining balance is $12,500. $12,500. The sum hung in the air, astronomical, absurd. I don't understand, I stammered. Why are you calling me? Your son, Mr. David Vance, listed you as the primary financial guarantor for any and all charges not covered by his insurance. I stopped breathing. Not an emergency contact, not a backup, the primary financial guarantor. He had not wanted me in the room. He had not wanted me in the hospital. He had not even wanted me in the city. But he had wanted my money. He had wanted the nest egg I had scraped together from 20 years of working double shifts at the diner and shelving books at the library. The money I had saved from selling Thomas's garage, the money that was supposed to be my security. Mrs. Vance, are you there? We need to arrange a payment schedule. Can you make a deposit this week? Otherwise, the account will be moved to a formal collections process, which could, of course, negatively impact your son's credit. I looked at my hands, resting on the old wooden table. They were not the soft hands of my youth. The knuckles were swollen from arthritis. The skin was rough, despite the lotion I used. These were the hands that had scoured pots at the diner, the hands that had carried stacks of books, the hands that had held my dying husband, the hands that had knitted a yellow blanket that was still folded in my suitcase. I thought of David's embarrassed, shifty eyes in that hospital corridor. She's not comfortable. She's never understood you. He had known, even as he was saying it, that my name was on a piece of paper in an office downstairs, committing me to a debt I couldn't afford for a family that found me substandard. A feeling rose in me, hot and clear, burning away the fog of grief and confusion. It was not anger. It was clarity. It was the sharp, bright snap of a chain that had been pulling me underwater for years. Ma'am? The voice on the phone insisted, impatient now. I took a deep breath. When I spoke, my voice was not the trembling whisper of the woman in the motel. It was calm. It was steady. It was a voice I had not heard in a very long time. I'm afraid you have the wrong number, I said. There was a pause. I'm sorry? Ma'am, this is the number provided by Mr. Vance. Then Mr. Vance has made a mistake. I am not related to that account. I do not have a son in Chicago. But ma'am, our records clearly state. Your records are incorrect. Good day. I pressed the end button on my phone and placed it face down on the table. My heart was hammering so loud it felt like a bird trapped in my chest. The tears were burning again, but this time they were different. They were not tears of pain. They were tears of release. I got up from the table, walked to my living room, and sat in my favorite armchair, the worn-out one Thomas had bought me. The sun was rising, painting the living room wall in streaks of pale gold. The house was still silent. But for the first time in my life, I felt a profound, exhilarating, and terrifying peace. I had chosen myself. There are memories we keep like photographs, polished and perfect. David, born in the middle of a July heat wave, the air so thick you could drink it. Thomas, my husband, his hands permanently stained with engine grease, holding his newborn son with a tenderness that made my chest ache. He had owned a small garage, Vance & Son Auto, though we only had the one son. It was a good life, a simple life. We weren't rich, but we had love. We had the small house with the big oak tree, the smell of biscuits on Saturday mornings, the sound of David laughing as Thomas pushed him on the tire swing. Then, when David was 16, the world tilted. Thomas was working under a vintage Mustang, a car he adored. An aneurysm, they said. Instant, no warning, no goodbye. He was 42 years old. Our life, the one we knew, ended that day. We were left, David and I, in the echoing silence of a house suddenly too large. I sold the garage. I had to. I didn't know the first thing about carburetors, and the debts were piling up. David was shattered. He was 16, forced to become the man of the house overnight. He held me while I cried, his teenage shoulders stiff and awkward, and he made a promise. I'll take care of you, Mom. I'll get a good job. I'll make you proud. He became my entire focus, my engine, my reason for being. I took a job waiting tables at the 24-hour diner, my feet swelling, my hair perpetually smelling of fried onions and bleach. I took a second, quieter job as a part-time assistant at the town library. I worked until I was bone-tired, but every dollar I saved went into an account for his education. And he did it. He studied relentlessly. He got a full scholarship to Ohio State for engineering. He was going to build bridges, he told me. Connect people. I cried at his graduation, my pride so fierce it was a physical pain. We did it, Mom, he said, hugging me in his cap and gown. You did it, I corrected him. 2 months later, he got the offer. A huge, prestigious firm in Chicago. The salary was more than Thomas and I had ever made in a year combined. It's so far, I'd whispered, my heart breaking even as I smiled for him. It's just an 8-hour train ride, Mom. I'll come home all the time, and you'll come visit. I'll buy you a ticket, first class. The first 6 months were fine. He called every Sunday. We talked for an hour. He was excited, overwhelmed by the city, by the work. Then he met Sophia. She was a marketing executive at his firm, ambitious, polished, from a wealthy family in the Chicago suburbs. I saw her for the first time over a crackling video call. She smiled, but it was a quick, appraising smile, the kind of smile that registers and dismisses you in the same instant. The calls became shorter. Sophia and I have dinner plans, Mom. Then less frequent. We're going to her parents' place in Lake Forest this weekend. Then came the wedding. It was a lavish affair at a country club I couldn't have afforded to walk into. Sophia's mother, a woman who looked like she was carved from ice, had organized everything. David sent me a check for the train ticket and the hotel. I bought a simple navy blue dress at a department store sale. When I arrived, I saw the other women in designer gowns, their jewelry sparkling. I felt like a field mouse at a Panthers party. I was not seated in the front row with the family. I was in the 7th row, behind a large floral arrangement, next to a distant cousin of Sophia's. I watched my son get married from behind a spray of white orchids. During the reception, Sophia's mother glided over to me. "Eleanor," she said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "So lovely you could make it. David is just so grounded. It's charming, where he comes from." I smiled and said nothing. I saw David, pulled into her orbit, laughing at his new father-in-law's jokes, looking handsome, and looking, for all the world, like he belonged. And I knew, in that moment, that I did not. The distance became a chasm. When he called, his voice was different, clipped, as if he were on a conference call. "Mom, I can't talk long. I found out about the pregnancy on Instagram. A professionally staged photo of Sophia holding a tiny pair of shoes, David's hand on her stomach. The caption, 'The best is yet to come. Baby Vance, arriving February.'" I stared at the post for a full minute before I called him. "Honey, you're having a baby." "Oh, yeah," he said, as if it were an afterthought. "We were going to tell you. Things have just been crazy." I knitted the yellow blanket. I sent a package with a silver rattle my mother had given me. I never received a thank you note. When I asked David, he sighed. "Mom, Sophia is really tired. Pregnancy is hard on her. And she's very specific about the baby's aesthetic. She appreciates the thought, though." Aesthetic. My mother's silver rattle wasn't part of her aesthetic. When I asked about coming for the birth, the panic in his voice was immediate. "Mom, it's not a good time. Sophia wants it to be calm, just her and her mom." "But I'm your mom, David. It's different. Please don't make this difficult." And I, like a fool, had agreed. I had waited. I had told him, "Just call me when he's born. I'll be on the next train." He never called. I found out about Noah's birth the same way I found out about the pregnancy. Instagram. A picture of a tiny, wrinkled fist. "He's here. Noah Vance, 7 pounds 2 ounces. I had found out at the same time as his 1,000 other followers. I had called him then, furious and heartbroken. "Why, David? Why wouldn't you call me?" "We've just been so busy, Mom. It's been chaotic. I was going to call you. Please, don't be upset." I booked my train ticket anyway. I packed my bag. I packed the yellow blanket and the casseroles, still believing I could fix this. Still believing that the boy I raised was in there somewhere. I had walked into that hospital full of a desperate, stupid hope, only to be turned away in the hallway. My phone rang again, pulling me from the memory. It was 3 days after the call from the hospital. I had left my phone on, charging, a silent sentinel on the kitchen counter. It was David. I let it ring, and ring, and ring, until it went to voicemail. A minute later, a text message. "Mom, call me. It's an emergency." Another text. "Why aren't you answering?" The hospital called again. Another. "Mom, this isn't funny. I need you to fix this. Sophia is hysterical." Fix this. Not "I'm sorry." Not "how could I have done this to you?" But fix this. The texts continued all day, escalating from confusion to frustration to pure, unadulterated rage. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. After everything. Sophia was right about you. You always have to make everything about you. You're selfish." Selfish. The word vibrated on the small screen. The woman who had given up her life for him. The woman who had worked her fingers raw. Selfish. That night, an email arrived. The subject line was, "You are ruining us." I opened it. It was a long, rambling tirade. It was about how stressed they were, how Sophia was suffering from the trauma of childbirth, how this hospital bill was a clerical error that had turned into a nightmare, how my stunt with the billing department was childish and cruel. "You have no idea what it's like," he wrote. "We are trying to build a family, and you are actively trying to sabotage it, all because you felt left out. I'm your son. I am in trouble. I need your help. Is your pride more important than your family? Than your grandson?" I read the email 3 times. The old Eleanor would have caved. She would have called, crying, apologizing. She would have drained her savings account. But the old Eleanor was gone. She had died in a cheap motel room in Chicago. I typed a single reply. "Dear David, you are correct. I am your mother, which is why I find it so strange that you did not call me when my grandson was born. I found out on Instagram. I am your mother. Yet you sat me in the 7th row at your wedding. I am your mother. Yet you told me I was not welcome at the hospital. while your wife's mother held my grandson. You are my son. Yet you listed me as a financial guarantor for a $12,500 bill without my knowledge, even as you were telling me I was not family enough to be in the room. You are right. Family is supposed to help each other. But help is a two-way street. Respect is a two-way street. You cannot treat me like a stranger when it's convenient, and like a bank when it's not. My dignity is not for sale. I will not be paying the bill. I hope you and Sophia find a way to resolve your finances. I truly wish you the best. Do not contact me again. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. I blocked his email. I blocked Sophia on Instagram. I unplugged the phone from the wall. And for the first time in 35 years, I went to bed and slept for 10 straight hours. A year passed. A year of profound, healing silence. I did not know if they had paid the bill. I did not know if their credit was ruined. I did not know my grandson. This was the price of my dignity, and I paid it every day. I grieved for David as if he had died. In a way, he had. I grieved for the grandson I would never know. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I joined a book club. I started gardening. I took the money I would have spent visiting Chicago and I retiled my bathroom. I was rebuilding my life, one small, quiet piece at a time. I was no longer David's mother. I was Eleanor. And Eleanor was enough. Then, one Tuesday, the phone rang. It was an unknown number, but this time from a local Columbus area code. Mrs. Vance? My name is Mark. I'm a case manager with Franklin County Child Services. My blood ran cold again, but for a different reason. Yes? What is this about? Ma'am, we have a child in our temporary care. His name is Noah Vance. He's 14 months old. Noah. I breathed his name. It felt foreign on my tongue. His parents, David and Sophia Vance, were found in a distressed situation. It appears they were evicted from their apartment in Chicago 6 weeks ago. They've been living in a motel here in Columbus. Your son lost his job some time ago. Mrs. Vance, your daughter-in-law, Sophia, is unwell. She's been admitted for psychiatric evaluation. Postpartum depression that seems to have escalated into a severe anxiety disorder. David is overwhelmed and unable to care for the child. He listed you as his only family. Only family. How the tables had turned. He's at the motel? I asked, my voice flat. No, ma'am. He's at our facility. He needs placement. We were hoping you might. Where is he? I met my grandson for the first time in a sterile room with brightly colored foam mats on the floor. He was small for his age, with huge, terrified hazel eyes. My son's eyes. He wasn't crying. He was just watching, silent. I saw David in the hallway. He looked like a ghost. He was thin, unshaven, and his eyes were hollow. When he saw me, he didn't speak. He just crumpled. He fell against the wall and sobbed, his body shaking. I did not go to him, not yet. I walked into the room and knelt on the foam mat. Noah watched me, his thumb in his mouth. Hello, Noah, I said softly. I'm your grandma. I'm Eleanor. I didn't reach for him. I just sat there. I took the old, worn leather purse from my shoulder, the one I had carried that night at the hospital. I unzipped it. I still had the yellow blanket, folded small at the bottom. I had never been able to throw it away. I took it out and laid it on the mat between us. Noah stared at it. He crawled forward, a hesitant motion. He touched the yarn, his tiny fingers feeling the soft texture. Then he looked up at me, a long, searching look. I held out my arms. He hesitated, then crawled into my lap, burying his face in my chest, his small body smelling of sour milk and fear. I wrapped my arms around him, and this time, I was the one who was crying. It was not a simple reunion. It was not a happy ending. It was a new beginning, and it was hard. David and Noah moved in with me. David got a job at a local engineering firm, a fraction of his Chicago salary, but it was a start. Sophia stayed in treatment for 2 months. When she came out, she was a different woman, quieter, fragile, and finally, honest. She sat at my kitchen table one evening, the same table where I had received the hospital call. I was so jealous of you, she whispered, twisting a napkin in her hands. David, he adored you. He talked about you like you were a saint. And my mother always made me feel like I wasn't good enough. I was terrified I wouldn't be enough for him, that he would see I wasn't perfect. And you were the measuring stick I could never live up to, so I pushed you away. You almost destroyed him, I said, my voice not unkind, but firm. I almost destroyed us all, she agreed, tears rolling down her face. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I learned that forgiveness is not a single event, it is a daily practice. David and I had to rebuild 35 years of trust. He had to learn that my love was not an obligation, and I had to learn that his respect was not a given. But the real lesson, the one that settled deep in my bones, was not about them, it was about me. I had spent my life believing that being a good mother meant endless, silent sacrifice. I thought my value was measured by how much I could give, how much I could endure. I was wrong. My value was in my own dignity. True love does not demand that you erase yourself. It does not ask you to be small so someone else can feel big. By saying no, I had done more than just refuse a bill. I had reclaimed my life. I had taught my son, in the most painful way possible, that I was a person, not just a resource. And in doing so, I had, against all odds, saved us. This morning, Noah, now 3, ran into my room and jumped on the bed, his laughter filling the silent house. David and Sophia have their own apartment now, just 10 minutes away. They are rebuilding. They are fragile, but they are trying. I am still Eleanor. I am still a mother. But I am also, finally, a grandmother. I am no longer an intruder, no longer a financial guarantor. I am a presence, I am respected, and I am here, not because I was needed, but because I chose to be.